Today you'll hear about what makes Ponkapog Bog unique to the Blue Hills and, in many ways, to Massachusetts. This is Judy Laird-Jacobs, the Executive Director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, and you will hear from Rick Kessely, who is a professor at UMass Boston. If you've been to Ponkapog Bog, please let us know in the comments. Although this is not live this week, we will be checking the comments and we would love to know your questions. You are watching Blue Hills Alive, your weekly guide to the Blue Hills, which is sponsored by Tom O'Neill of Success Realty in Milton. So let's get started.
So we're looking now at the very beginning of the bog, and right here you can see the sphagnum moss, one of the many species in here. There's several. I can't tell you what the different species are, but it's the really key feature of these bogs because the sphagnum moss actually creates very acidic habitat. And that acidic habitat then restricts all the other plants that can be in here. And so we'll see lots of that. It's interesting, it stays green all winter. I think once it gets a little warmer, it'll start photosynthesizing again. Again, sphagnum is a very, very primitive plant. Again, mosses are probably some of the very, very first plants that made it out of the ocean. They have very small vascular tissue, so it can never grow very tall because it can't transport water very high. The last thing about sphagnum, it's interesting, because of the acidity it creates, it tends to grow on top of itself. So it gets thicker and thicker, and that's what makes the mat of the bog. Peat bogs in England are famous, and when they dry them out, they have these heavy chunks of compressed, undecomposed sphagnum, which they use for, well, they used to use for burning in a heat source all through England. I think they don't do that so much anymore. But that's what basically is going to make the entire bog base on which all these other plants will then grow.
Thanks for watching Blue Hills Alive, your weekly guide to the Blue Hills. We hope to see you next week at noon, where we will really be live and we will be up on top of Great Blue talking about Elliott Tower. See you then.